Welcome to Psychology Today. I'm your host, Ann Morrow. This is a show about bicycling in general and specifically about bicycle safety. Thank you for joining us. And I want to thank our crew that's behind the scenes for making this show possible for us. And of course, thank you to Northwest Bicycle Safety Council for producing Psychology Today. Northwest Bicycle Safety Council is kind of basking in the glory of the end of the year. We've had a very successful 2014. We had bike fairs and helmet fittings and our event ride, Beaverton, Banks, and Beyond Bicycle Tour, and of course our monthly TV show, Psychology Today. And we've had a very good year, and I want to thank you for supporting us here in the community, and thanks to our sponsors for hearing our needs and stepping up and helping us and making all these things possible. Let's get going with our show. We have three guests, Glen, Bolen, and Shawna Turner and Dave Kelly from a local bicycle club, Portland Velo. And we're just going to talk about bicycling. And these people all come from different backgrounds, and they're going to share with us their love and joy of bicycling and different safety elements and why they like to bicycle. And I hope that that in turn will encourage you to come out and join us and ride your bicycle as well. And so I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, and we'll just kind of go around the corner, starting with you, Glen. And if you'd just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Ann. Yeah, Glen Bolen. I grew up here in town. I lived just over in Portland. My great-grandpa was born in a covered wagon on the Oregon Trail, so I didn't drive here for state low or anything like that. I'm a father of two kids in public school. Budding all cyclists themselves. I'm a city planner by day and a cyclist on the weekends and in the mechanic shop in the evenings.
Good for you. Shawna?
Hi, I'm Shawna. I'm the opposite of Glen. Like so many, I am an import and not a native to Oregon. I came out about 17 years ago. Work with computers, which is, again, pretty standard, not native, works with computers, came to the state. Fell in love with Oregon because it's beautiful, great to bike in. Got on bikes fairly recently, but I play with bikes and running and work with computers for a sports company.
Oh, okay. So you're very activity-oriented.
I am.
Not a couch potato.
Not very good at it. I try every once in a while just to give everybody a break.
Dave?
Yeah, Dave Kelly. Maybe in between these two stories. My wife and I moved here from Chicago in 1981. And our daughter was born in 83, but she now lives in Virginia. We're going to go visit her for Christmas here in a matter of a week or so. And yeah, I'm retired now. I was self-employed for the last 18 years of my career, but I was pretty seriously involved in biking for maybe 30, 35 years. And am enjoying retirement, but actively involved in a number of activities, including work for Portland Velo as the club. And I have a band. A jazz trio, Arc Jazz, and keeps me busy.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. I'm going to go back. We'll go back around the table and now talk about your bicycling history and how did you become a cyclist and what role does the bicycle play in your life now?
I think like a lot of us, my life on the bike has evolved and changed over time. Grew up as a kid, used to ride around some of these roads with my family, single speed riding slow, family Fano Creek Trail kind of things like that nature. And then in grade school, high school, this was before, I think we didn't used to drive kids to sporting events and things like we do now. So, get on the Peugeot, go to soccer practice, go visit my friend over at Mount Tabor, things, all over town. Things that I feel a little nervous about letting my own kids do now, which is something, as a city planner and a cyclist, that weighs on me pretty heavily. I was a bike commuter in the mid-'90s, early mid-'90s, and then I took a little hiatus when I got a motorcycle. Put on a few pounds, where I wasn't riding as much, and like most motorcyclists, had that scary moment where I made an appointment with Craigslist right after that, sold the motorcycle, and pulled my 20-year-old road bike out of the garage and started saying to my wife, I need a new bike. This thing is just so heavy and slow. Anyway, so bought a bike. That was 2006, and that was that same year I found the club that summer, and it's no looking back.
Good for you. Shawna?
I was the kid with the steel touring bike that quite literally couldn't reach the seat and the pedals at the same time for 5-6 years. Big, old, heavy, and I thought I had the best bike on the block because it had 3 speeds. Best thing ever. Went off to high school. Unfortunately, I commuted to high school, so I ended up off the bike for that. In university, I somewhat made my rent money when other than jobs, I would buy used bikes, try and kit them out, and resell them to other students because at university, that's something you can do. Off the bike again, move out here, put on a few pounds, get on mountain bikes. Not anything serious because somewhat intimidated by them at the time. On and off, then off them again and took up running. Then I got injured. And in 2013, when battling high hamstring tendonitis and you go, kind of an endurance athlete, and I'm not allowed to run to the car, now what? So I bought a road bike, and lucky me, I ran into Portland Velo, got assimilated with a fun group of folk that made it way less intimidating than I had been by mountain bikes.
Okay.
And been doing endurance events on the bike since then.
Great. Interesting story. Dave?
Yeah, so I had, growing up, really almost non-existent athletic background, some softball and whatever. In fact, I like to tell, I was more involved in theater and debate and that kind of stuff. And I did swim on the high school squad, and but I wasn't very good. In fact, it got to the point where, knowing my theater and debate background, the coach said one day to me, "Dave, you know, we could really use an announcer for the team at the meets." Subtle, but you know, I got the picture. Anyway, so I wasn't doing much athletic stuff. We moved out here. I started cycling a little bit more, but got pretty serious about, I somehow got it in my head that I wanted to do a triathlon. And Hag Lake just came to mind, which is about a half Ironman, so it was, you know, kind of serious deal. And I trained, I did a couple years of triathloning. And then I thought, you know, I think maybe just 1 year I'll focus on the bike. And I never went back to anything but the bike. I just had so much fun. It was a real revelation, though, to shift from doing a lot of riding solo, most riding solo, to riding with a club and riding with a group. It's an exaggeration to say it's a completely different sport, but it's not that much of an exaggeration. And you know, so I'm really enjoying the club, and I probably do cutting back more, but you know, it started off when I had 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 miles a year, and then it kind of went into more like 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 miles a year, and now it's more back like 4,000 miles a year. I've gotten more consistent about weight training. I think it's a good thing for aging athletes in particular. And yeah, so when I retired, I kind of put a capstone on my professional career by deciding to ride across the United States. And I went with a supported tour group called Pack Tour. We went from San Diego to Charleston, North Carolina, or is it South Carolina? Whatever, South Carolina.
South Carolina.
By way of the Four Corners and Colorado and Illinois and back down through Tennessee, Kentucky. And that was a heck of a trip, but it kind of took the need for doing event rides that I'd been doing kind of for 2 or 3 a year, and they were getting more and more and longer and longer. And so now I just kind of ride with the club, you know, 2-hour, 3-hour, 4-hour rides, and maybe 1 or 2 event rides a year.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the club. As I said initially, you guys are all with Portland Velo, which is kind of here in the Beaverton, Oregon area, Washington County, Oregon. And I belong to Portland Wheelman, which is another Portland bike club, and I also belong to Vancouver Bicycle Club because I live in Vancouver. So we have a lot of, amongst all of us, we have a lot of club experience. So initially, Portland Velo's catchphrase is, "It's all about the ride." So let's talk about that concept. How does that impact what Portland Velo does and its activities and stuff? It's all about the ride.
Let me start off, and then Dave, you might want to get a little more history of the club than I do. But I think as a club participant, you've seen there are group rides around this country really vary. Some are a race, a throwdown, a get dropped. Some are a chatting, talking ride. And I think our group was formed by a group of folks that felt like they wanted a friendlier group. They didn't want to fear getting lost, getting a flat, not having someone to help them out there. And so competition took a backseat to camaraderie. It was kind of I think that's where the goal of it, all about the ride comes about. And so we've, from that point, tailored our riding experience so that we can foster the enjoyment of the ride, which keeps you coming back and makes you want to keep doing it longer. That's kind of a quick one. Anything different, or is that?
No, that's completely accurate. I was right there in the first group of 6 or 7 people that started talking about forming a new club in the fall of 2005. And the club was formally organized in early 2006. And that's actually right after I got back from my transcontinental ride. But the origin of the phrase, "it's all about the ride," was that you do need a certain amount of structure to make a club function as a club. But we wanted to keep that in the background as much as possible, so that the experience of riders was just about coming out and having fun as consistent with what Glen was saying, to have a welcoming, open environment for cyclists from a broad range. So we've tried to organize our primary ride, which is on Saturday, so that we can really accept and find a good and supportive environment for cyclists. I wouldn't say absolute total beginners, but we have our Saturday ride is organized around speed groups, and so you come out and you pick a group based on how hard you can or want to ride that day. And our low end is at 14, 16 miles an hour, and there's a high end group which is unlimited, but it goes up kind of graduated.
None of us can ride fast enough to really see how fast that group can ride, but
you hear rumors.
We hear rumors. We've seen the YouTube.
And you've seen some people that lead.
Exactly.
Well, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that. So tell us a little bit about the club. Like you said, there's got to be some structure if you're going to have a club, because there are meetup groups where there's just some people get together and ride a bike. And not to disparage them at all, but this is a club. So what would you say is the distinction between those, and why a club?
I think one of the things that makes us unique is, and that's what really helped bring me in, is consistency. We are right near the Hillsborough Dog Park every Saturday morning. There's always people there. And so, with mountain biking, you had to talk a friend into driving Mount Hood,
Yes.
And you couldn't go alone, because that's dangerous. But with Portland Velo, you say, Friday night, I'm going to go to bed early, I'm going to ride tomorrow. And you just know that there's going to be a club there. Now, obviously, if it's icy, we're going to stay home. But every other day. So that consistency, you need an organization to put that, just to make sure that can happen every day. What Dave alluded to, our speed groups, we break into led groups. So we have a designated ride leader to take groups of usually 12 or less. And so we'll break into, sometimes we'll have 8 different small groups go out on a Saturday, so that we're never so big cars can't get around us. So we're small enough that the ride leader can make sure everyone in the group is able to hold on, eating, drinking, all those has mechanicals. So that also helps the riders, because they know they have that security. But that, just putting that, it's amazing until you get in behind the scenes in a volunteer organization how much work it takes to put on something like that. Now I go and I do an event ride and I realize, we are as organized, if not more, than some of these $65, $75 rides, and we do it every week.
Yeah.
So it's become kind of like a symphony. We all know our parts, and it just keeps rolling along, but there's a group of people. There's an operations team, a board of directors, there's president, there's treasurer, there's all those things that you need. And then we have a dedicated group of volunteers. We have about 30 or 40 folks that are regular ride leaders.
Sure.
And so they take time to volunteer to lead a small pack each week. And then we have a guy whose only job is to do maps.
Okay.
Just puts together every week. I think it's Wednesday, he sends out an email. We have the map published. On Wednesdays you can decide, is it a hilly weekend or is it a flat weekend?
Okay.
So it's just a little bit.
So that's a good description of the club. I think we'll get back to some of this a little bit more. Why did each of you choose to join the club? You kind of all touched on that a little bit, but how did you find Portland Velo very specifically? Because the internet now, and I think some of you, like Dave, you probably didn't find, you were part of the founding thing, but at that time, I don't think even in 2006, while you might have a website, I don't think that was really the major way that people found things. It was becoming that. but I don't think it was quite that.
Yeah,
yet.
the website was created right in the beginning,
Yeah.
but it became more and more important as time went on to get information out there about what the upcoming ride was going to be and how the rides were organized and so on.
So I was reading some history about Portland Wheelmen, and they started back in 1971. No computers. They typed postcards every other week with the rides and sent those out to the members. Granted, there weren't that many members, and that obviously became too cumbersome for, but imagine, some of our viewers might not know what typing and a typewriter is, but anyway, we've come a long way with this internet base for our clubs that I know a lot of people that come to rides I lead.
Right.
How did you find us on the internet?
That's a good point. I mean, I was contacted today by someone in Vermont who's going to be moving here next year, found us on the internet. I first thought she had Portland Velo of Portland, Maine, because there's one of those too.
There is one of those.
But that's a good point. My discovery was doing a group ride. I was doing one of the fundraiser wine Children's Heart Association rides, Bike Gallery does, and I was just kind of a social guy sometimes. I was talking to a fella next to me who just nice and impressive rider, and he told me about the club, and it was about a year old at that point, and that was the aha moment when I realized I don't have to ride by myself. I don't have to talk a friend into going. I can just find these people, and so I went out that next weekend, and it's been a regular thing ever since. But they didn't. I don't think the routes were published or anything then, and I don't even think we had maps to hand out to everyone. It was really stay with the ride leader.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks. And Shawna, how about you?
Mine is the more modern experience because obviously working in computers, I'm a little
Yeah.
biased
Yeah.
toward them. And so looking for places to join rides and where can I get data. Now, I also did the human side of things, which is all the local shops tend to offer their own organized group rides on a semi-regular basis. And so you run into people that do both, and you can ask about the shops and who they work with and who they recommend. And so I kind of narrowed it down to a small list, and then I came out. My plan was originally to go kind of sample a few, and I had kind of 3 targeted that were all reasonably convenient to me because I'm up in the Cedar Mills area, and went out for Portland Velo and was like, okay, this totally fits me, especially because I was a novice on a road bike, right? I had not been on a road bike, so what DK was mentioning about the structured group sets and the fact that all of a sudden the things that I had to worry about on my own on a mountain bike, like I show up and they're taken care of. I don't need to know where I'm going. I just need to know who the ride lead is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if I have a mechanical, even if I don't know how to solve it, which I'm fairly handy, but there's some weird stuff that can go on a bike. We almost always have somebody in a group that can handle the really weird stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was just, I went once and went, this is fabulous. We're coming back.
And
Not to speak of the feeling of security with respect to safety.
Right.
Those kind of issues, and the greater visibility that a group of 8 or 10 cyclists has than just somebody by themselves or even a couple of people. It's easy, it just seems like a lot of cases, if you're smaller than a car, you're invisible to many drivers.
Yeah.
But as a group of people kind of working more or less together is more visible.
And I think some women feel more vulnerable as well, more so perhaps than some men. And so having people around you that
was one of the appealing things of Portland Velo, to be honest, is that I knew some people in cycling that were a little, could go with hardcore. And so I knew that I was, by definition, being new, not hardcore.
Yeah.
And so being able to show up at Portland Velo and a shocking number of the ride leads were women of every age and description, and they were super awesome and super helpful and super confident, and then you had this group of people around you and you just felt like, no, I can do this.
Yeah.
This is good. You're not being judged, and you had a safety net. Like, that combination is really appealing.
And whether or not you even use the safety net,
There just knowing it's there.
Yeah.
It's just instantly you felt like, oh, well, if something goes terribly wrong, there's a group of people.
Yes. If worst case scenario, somebody goes and gets their car and comes and gets me.
Exactly.
I think for any of us.
The most common safety net is a candy bar. I mean,
Yes.
you forget a water bottle.
Yep.
It's that, or it's the distraction. You're tired. We're gonna talk. And you'll forget you're tired. Next thing you know, we're home.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
And then also as a newbie, one of the other things about the club rides is the fact that you don't even realize how many skills you're picking up just by being around all the other people. And then as you progress inside the groups, because I'm one of those weird people that climbed a number of groups, you start getting more pro tips out of ride leaders are like, have you thought about, this hill climbing thing? Well, the reason you're having a hard time is because you're coming at it like a runner. You're not a runner, you're on a bike. So those little tips that make a world of difference in your experience of the ride.
And the way that it's given is usually in your best interest. Nobody's being hypercritical. They're trying to help you.
Right.
They want you to be successful. They want you to reach your goals. So it's all given with.
It's hard not to take advice from the guy that gave you food.
I might withhold it. Well, let's talk a little bit about we talked about the website. That's how people find a bike club a lot anymore. And you've got some rules that that a person that might be looking at the club that might be a good idea to look over. Let's talk about some of those concepts. One is headphones are not permitted while on the ride, and that seems good to me, but explain why that's a good idea not to use headphones. I mean, those of us that do spin classes like some good tunes while we're riding up a hill. So
I mean, it's the same reason you don't talk on your phone while you're driving. I mean, you can't. You really have to have all your senses tuned in to be safe and be on a bike. You hear, you're also, the social side of it is you're talking to each other, you're listening. What's the breathing like of the person behind me? Are we riding a comfortable pace? So you're really trying to be in tune with everything, not just the safety, but the people. But I say it really does come down to safety. You can't hear those brakes or that revved engine or that Harley Davidson or whatever when you're listening to music.
or that Prius.
That's the new challenge. Is some of those electric cars, even without headphones, if you're going at speed, you don't hear them.
Yeah.
And that every second you lose is a second of reaction time you don't have anymore. And headphones, by definition, would make that worse.
There may be a ride leader, but it's also we like to say the responsibility of everybody that's a member of the group to communicate with everybody else about, car back, giving a signal that is the saying car back is the equivalent of saying stay in line, don't get out, don't pull ahead of anybody or tighten up,
And that is listed on your web page to communicate verbally. And I think people that haven't ridden in groups and people that don't ride at all are unfamiliar that we are communicating, or at least if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, we're communicating with each other back and forth. The person in front is pointing out hazards in the road.
I was going to say, a lot of motorists probably don't know we have our own sign
signals.
language that means, tracks, great, dog, whatever.
Slowing.
Slowing down.
And
stopping.
we're using our voices. Some sophisticated tandems have radios. We don't do that, but we do yell at each other, warning each other. And like you say, the person in the back is calling out car back, and that information gets passed up to tell us all to pull to the right to share the road. And I think as a club, we all try to do that. I don't know about your club, the clubs I belong to. Every now and then there's somebody that doesn't heed that warning and maybe needs some special attention to encourage them to do that. And I know quite a while ago, Bruce Buffington, our producer, had received an email about, I think it was here in Washington County, a motorist complained that they were going up a hill and there were cyclists across the lane. And, I'll be honest, I was pretty sure it wasn't Portland Velo, because I know you guys don't do that. That's not your style. I didn't think it was the wheelman, because we don't do that. But every now, I don't know who that was. But the idea that a group of cyclists was giving us all a bad name by not sharing the road, by spanning the whole lane and not letting cars get by, those kinds of things frustrate all of us.
It's beautiful. People come from all over the region to ride this county.
Yes.
And it's not a surprise. I think there is that's one of the reasons to keep group sizes down. And what happens, I see a lot, especially where it's real dangerous, those blind hills, where you can't see over the crest, and that's when speed differential within your group will make a big difference. A couple of folks that are maybe, in the front third that are going to just maintain, stay in the saddle and just keep riding up, and then a couple of folks get behind them and say, I want to go a little faster, and that's when people have the natural temptation to want to pass and sprint up the hill. You really have to be careful in those situations, and because you'll see a car passing a car coming the other way, and we will get vocal and get a little loud sometimes. I think we've heard, yellow line is, that's all I have to say is yellow line. You just don't cross the yellow line. The center line is verboten zone. And it seems like a simple rule, but you always feel like, well, come on, there's one around, but there could be.
There could be, yeah.
Behind what I was saying about the for me, what I found out was such a difference between group riding and riding by myself, or even just with one other person. The sense of accomplishment of working together as a team. Yeah, it's in the nature of the competitive nature of a lot of people who come out for cycling, that there will be places on a ride where you'll say, well, who can get to the top of the hill first, or a sprint section where it's known that there will be a regroup place at the end of that sprint section. But for the most part, the feeling of working together as a group, drafting, pace lining, communicating, giving signals, that feeling of teamwork is very rewarding and makes it contribute strongly to it being another level of the sport.
So do we have to be members of Portland Velo to ride with the club?
No.
Not at all. You'll want to be once you meet us, but no, we don't require that. And the members get the perk of getting that weekly ride email with the route. They can go to our entire database of rides that we have published online, and then we do get some sponsor discounts.
So what we've kind of talked about this, but what would you specifically tell people that would encourage them to maybe join a bike club or look into that to improve their riding?
We get people all the time. I think I see a fair number of emails because I take care of that part of the website that gets the emails. Usually people contact us, they're interested, they're looking. But I have had other folks that I could just kind of tell are cyclists. One of our racers now, I met him at a meeting through work. And we were talking, and I said, "You're a cyclist, aren't you?" And he lives out in Hillsborough, and I told him about the club, and he's been coming out with us. But it's like you're always having a party. You always want your friends to the party. Every Saturday is another party.
Yeah.
And so you meet someone new, you like them, and you say, you ought to come out. We are really fun. And, how fast you ride? Oh, yeah, Dan will lead that group. You love it. So
you just come out and you can rely on the fact that there's going to be maps and cue sheets to hand it out. There'll be a group with a ride leader that's appropriate for what you're trying to do that day or what you're capable of. And it's very conducive, and we'll have even in bad weather, unless the ride is canceled for ice or fog or something like that, we'll have like 40 people in the wintertime, and we'll have 100, 125, 150 on good weather days in the summer. So it's a very party kind of event.
Yeah, it is. And I think that safety piece, not safety so much as comfort. The concept of comfort is something that's very easy to convey to people. Say, come try us out. You're not going to be lost. You're not going to be on your own. One nice thing about our speed groups is people can say, even if you've already been riding with us, I'm going to try riding with the age group today, and I'm getting hungry, feeling a little tired. Dave will say, John's behind me. Lynn's back there. Just sit up, pedal soft, and join that group.
The fastest groups go out first.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you can always drop off if you're working too hard. You can always get picked up by the group behind.
Or just having a bad day, like all of us have.
It happens, and and all of us have also. I had a guy who just moved to town with us, and he was done. He was just too hungry, getting cold. Didn't know the roads here. Hadn't grabbed a map. And we're not going to leave the guy out on Scotch Church Road. It's like, all right, Dave, I'm going back with Jason. We'll see you this afternoon for lunch.
Right.
Yeah.
Take him back. And that's one of the things that it's kind of we'd have a talk if that happened every Saturday, but it isn't going to.
Right.
And we're all happy to avail that service of ourselves
You bet.
for the joy of making friends.
You bet. And you do. I know we had somebody this summer that came out on a bike that wasn't really roadworthy. All kinds of things went wrong, and ultimately somebody had to take their car to go get them because that bike was not getting back to the start, even cutting the route short. So, but that's what you're right. That's what you do. And she in turn took her bike immediately to a bike shop and made it roadworthy. So you're right. I mean, people look out for you in the club.
And I can think of a number of people who have come out with running shoes, flat pedals, and hybrids. And the next thing you know, they're mountain biking on YouTube, and they're on a PIR racing the summer series. And, a lot of people, they find it. They didn't buy the gear to start with. They bought the heart and the legs and the lungs. But they just got what they had.
And Shawna says that she was an unusual example of somebody who's moved up, but I think she's a good example. I don't think it's that rare the way that the groups can be used developmentally to progress, if you want to,
Yeah.
is that structure is real advantageous for people who, like Shawna, started at one place and they've kind of worked themselves up to being more proficient a rider, not only in terms of fitness and speed, let's say, but also in terms of skill and knowing how to work with other people on the bike.
Right. I think that is good. But I'd like to say, too, that not everybody wants to aspire to that.
Right.
And so there, if you're just kind of the cruiser, the weekend warrior, I just want to see the sights, you can stick with that, too.
Sure.
And there's no pressure.
Right.
We appreciate that each person is doing what appeals to them.
Right.
And you're going to get, the nice thing about this is you're doing something that you care about with other people that care about the same thing. So it's sort of a natural outgrowth that you're going to find a whole lot of friends you didn't know you had.
Yeah,
And you're going to make more, and you're going to get new experiences and new opportunities that you might not even have known existed, right?
Yes.
It starts out with a small addiction. I'm going to go out on a Saturday, and to Glen's point, I might have running shoes and not clip-ins, and eventually I discover that I like some of this stuff, and you go on trips, and you go out and have happy hours with these people, and all of a sudden you have a better, richer social set who all share a common interest with you that if you didn't join a club, you'd never know was there.
Right. That's absolutely true. Well, let's take a moment to go to a video now about bicycle safety, and we'll come back with our group from Portland Velo and talk some more about cycling. And so now we've got a safety video, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you.
Bike safe, bike smart.
Hi, my name is Xander.
And my name's Elizabeth.
Over the next few minutes, we're going to have some fun and talk about some pretty important stuff.
Some of it you've heard before, but it never hurts to hear it again.
And again.
And again. So here we go. Did you know that just falling off your bike is enough to get a serious brain injury? So play it safe. Wear your helmet every time you ride. It can reduce the risk of head injury by up to 85%.
And that's a lot. The helmet should be snug on your head and sit flat. The strap should form a V under your ear, and the chin strap should also be snug. 2 fingers should fit in between your eyebrow and your helmet.
Also, make sure your helmet meets safety standards. Look for a sticker that says CPSC. This stands for the Consumer Product Safety Commission.
All the stuff we talked about today is common sense.
But you still need to think. Be courteous and be predictable by always riding in a straight line.
Wear a helmet. And follow the rules of the road. Ride with traffic on the right side of the road. Ride single file.
Obey traffic lights and traffic signs. Check behind you before turning. Use proper hand signals.
Stop, look left, right, then left again before entering a street. And use caution at an intersection.
Make eye contact with other drivers. Be careful around parked cars and watch for objects in your path.
And at night, be seen to be safe.
Never assume that motorists or pedestrians will see you. Remember, bikes are smaller than cars, and if there's a crash between the two, any guesses who will win?
That's all the time we have. So remember these 4 words. Bike safe, bike smart.
All right, always a good safety video, and certainly that demonstrated a little bit about what we were talking about, of communicating with our hands and arms, signaling turns and things, and debris in the road, and using our voices sometimes too. So always a good way to be safe when you're riding with a group of cyclists. And we're back with Psychology today, and I've got guests from Portland Velo Bicycle Club and Glen Bolen and Shawna Turner and Dave Kelly here with me, and we're just talking about bicycling because we have a real passion for it, and we'd like to encourage others to join us out on the road. We're going to discuss cycling in Washington County because Portland Velo is pretty much based in Beaverton, Oregon, and that's Washington County, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So what are some of your favorite rides? The club has a lot of routes that they've developed over the years, maps and things that you have access to as a club member. And what are some of the favorites that you guys like?
Yeah, we have about, 150, I
Yeah.
think, in a map database.
Right.
A lot of them use the same roads. You know,
Sure.
we're on Evergreen almost every day, one way or the other. But I like to get out to the north and the west. So Cedar Canyon, Gales Creek. I love it when you're in an early morning too and you see some deer, some different, getting out a little farther. We saw a bear on one ride.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, out by Cedar Canyon. And this time of year too, that wetland's full of ducks and geese. So I like it when we get a little farther out. Obviously, that's one of the reasons I think that we start near the Hillsborough Dog Park is because it lets us get to the countryside like that.
Right.
And then we all have our own little favorite hills. I think one of mine is Holly Hill.
Yeah.
And it's a personal benchmark. I can gauge how's my diet been, how's my exercise and sleep patterns been by what gear I'm in on Holly Hill and how I feel when I get to the top. So there's also there's an airplane house up there. There's a 727 airplane that's up on stands, and you can.
If you blink, you'll miss it.
You blink, you miss it. And you wouldn't know it if you weren't on a bike, because in a car you'd never see it.
Yeah.
Right? You look up and see the wings, little red light flashing. So
Oh
there's
my
little
goodness.
things like little treasures
That's
like
worth
that.
going
you
up
could-
there
it's
for.
great.
Yeah,
It's
the
great.
guy's converted it to a house.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Is where he lives.
Yeah. So what about you? Those are a couple of my favorites.
Yeah, but I mean, you mentioned Cedar Canyon is one of my favorites, but we ride not infrequently on Dairy Creek, Pumpkin Ridge,
Yeah.
some great roads
Yeah.
out that way. We've got the section of rollers that can be a lot of fun on Thatcher and Kansas City. Stringtown, just some of the roads that come up all the time. This weekend we're going to do a ride that's named after the one significant climb called Carpenter Creek. It's one of those climbs. It's kind of like Holly Hill. It's not really steep. You can, maintain a good cadence by gearing down and just kind of work your way up. So those are some of the places we like.
Shawna, how about you?
I'll admit to Dairy Creek's a fun one because it's a false climb in a lot of ways. You don't realize that you're climbing, and so it's really easy to think you're doing better than you are and then realize you got a little bit to go. The other thing I really enjoy in the summer, we have a tendency to check around Skyline and some of the trails back in there, and so there are some pretty good juicy climby days where we will go up to Skyline like 3 or 4 times, and you climb up to Skyline, you slide your way down. You climb up to Skyline, you slide your way down.
Old Germantown.
Old
right?
Germantown, yeah, exactly. So that's always a good summer. I'm feeling fit and
Yeah.
fine.
My mom grew up on Kaiser Road there, so it's always fun for me too when we go by. And the
Wave.
cemetery by Bethany is where my relatives are, and so it's always kind of extra fun to go in those parts.
When you're tired, the Old Scots Church is fabulous, but that's
In the wintertime, we kind of cut back somewhat
Right.
on length,
That's
and we
gonna-
tend more towards flatter routes than hillier routes. But as the season progresses, we sort of try to alternate a flattish, because you can't actually, we're talking
Flat-ish.
Washington County, there is no flat ride.
No. Okay.
Really, strictly speaking, but flatter rides, and then one week, and then the next week will be a hillier ride, typically.
And that's a fitness and a safety thing, really. I mean, this time of year, as you've seen with these rains, first you get into September, you get the oil on the roads and stuff from the rains. But right now it's leaves.
Yeah.
And moss.
Yeah.
Leaves and moss. And some of the prettiest roads are really heavily wooded. And so it's a tough time of year. Going up's okay, but you got to come back down. And as a team, a group leading a lot of people, we don't want to bring some people to a place that might be risky. So
Right.
that's something we think about for them.
And you can just get cold and hypothermic.
Right.
I mean, even when you're dressed. So,
True.
so you're right. I think generally in the winter, you try to the rides tend to be a little shorter, maybe a little closer in, or they're modified just kind of on the spur of the moment if the weather really turns bad.
And they go by some favorite coffee shops
Yeah,
and places in
exactly,
case you
warm
need to
up.
get a little warm up.
And socialize and talk about summer riding. And in the summer, like you say, you kind of hopefully build up to a certain extent and includes more climbing.
Skyline. Working up sky. But the great thing about Washington County is that there's tremendous variety.
Yeah.
There are sections of flats, even if you can't put together a 35, 40 mile route that is completely flat. There are sections of flats, there's rollers, there's long climbs, there's short, steeper things, longer things. I mean, it's just,
And
there's
it's
all
pretty.
kinds of variety.
Sometimes I'm thinking, we are the brochure. Like the four of us right now, with this behind us, this is the brochure for someone's touring company who's going to be offering this out to customers across the country.
Yes.
And it's everything, right? You've got farmland in every state of cultivation. You've got vinlands and wineries, and you've got hillsides
Smell
and
the strawberries.
forests
Yeah.
and critters
And the clover.
and the clover and the
clovers.
mint
Wow.
and the wildlife, because you're going to see a ton of wildlife. And so you've got every possible environmental variable. And actually, in some ways, this kind of weather and the transition seasons are even more amazing, because you're going along and it's kind of gray and cloudy, and all of a sudden you get this sort of luminous moment of something where a rainbow pops up or the sun pops out, and you get this just rich tapestry of color in this moment that you can't capture.
Yeah.
You couldn't put it on film.
No.
And you're out in the middle of somewhere on your bike with a group of people having a great time going, that was so gorgeous.
Yeah.
A couple
to-
times a year we have a ride that will climb up a relatively short but real steep Blooming Fern Hill Road. And you get to the top of that, and on a decent weather day, and we do have them in this part of it, especially in the summertime, you can look out and you can see this entire valley. You see the skyline, ridge line way off in the distance, the entire valley floor of Washington County. There's some really beautiful, beautiful scenic views.
You'll see the mountains when the mountains are out. Sometimes the mountains will glow. I mean, you get some just amazing views from Washington County that you don't necessarily think of when you're in a car. You're thinking about getting from point to point.
Right.
But when you're on the ride, it's about the ride and what you see on the ride.
Yeah. You see it, you feel it, you smell it, you hear it. You just, and so just generally, I wanted to talk about that Washington County and the state of Oregon promotes cycling in this area. They want people to come. So you just described why people would want to come. Generally, you've been talking about the hills and that there's no flat. How would you encourage newer riders to not be discouraged by that aspect of they've driven through here? It's no secret that it's up and down.
Right.
What do you do about that? What about hills when you're a newer rider?
Some of the things like the Banks Veronia Trail that's new is fabulous, because you can take kids, you can take a new rider, anything, and not have to worry about hills or traffic. I think for a lot of folks, traffic is more of a worry than hills. Which is one of the nice things, the way the state and this county has planned that, the big laned roads kind of stop at that boundary, the urban growth boundary, and then we have these farm roads that are a little more gentle. But you can put together a ride out here that's not too hilly if you don't go as far. We tend to, I think, 40 miles is kind of an average ride this time of year, and so it's kind of hard not to hit a hill if you go 40 miles. But you can.
And generally, are your rides pretty descriptive, so a person knows this is going to be relatively flat, this is a challenge, this is going to be hilly, so they don't come in unknowing.
Yeah, we publish the route map and the little hill profile and the amount of elevation gained. And then when we do have hilly days, when we go up to Skyline, we make our announcements before the ride every Saturday morning, and we say, this is not the day to step up a group.
Yeah.
This is going to be a hard one. It looks easy because it's shorter than our other rides, but it's our steepest, most climbing. And likewise, we'll say, hey, today's a flat day. If you're trying to see if it's a little stronger, want to ride a little harder, this would be a good day to try it. So we do make those announcements, and so you can just look at the data.
To specifically answer your question about how do you make this less intimidating, one of the things that we touched on earlier is that we know that sometimes people are feeling like all feisty, and that there are different levels of skills on hills. And so we will establish regroup points. So we make a very concerted effort, especially with the less speedy pace groups, to make certain that there's no rider left behind.
Yeah.
And so if you're scared about a hill, and you know that it's okay, you're going to get to the top, and you're going to get a chance to catch your breath, and then we'll all go together for the next bit. That's a tremendously huge perk if you're nervous about hills to know you're not alone. There's going to be people there. The ubiquitous, they'll have food for you if you didn't bring enough to handle the hills, and they will make sure that you get a chance to catch your breath before you have to finish the rest of those 40 miles.
That's a really good point. You can always ride 2 more miles, and there's no hills that are really longer than 2 miles.
Sure.
Right. So you can always ride that much, and so if you say, okay, I'm going to just take my pace up this hill, they're going to be there. And by the nature that you got yourself into a speed group, there's people similar to you. There's nobody waiting 8, 10, 12 minutes there for you. There's a few minutes. You know,
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to do
Yeah.
that. But that's a really good point. The
And
reserves
there's
are
no
important.
guilt, right? I mean, that's the other thing. Is
Right.
like if you've got
Right.
the one guy that thinks that he could go win the Tour de France in the group, and you're feeling like I'm brand new, you feel horrible holding that
Sure.
person back. But because they're not in the group with you, as Glenn said, the people that are around you have a very similar skill set, and everybody knows, today may or may not be your day.
Yeah.
And everybody's good with that.
And they might have some pointers, like you said initially.
You're not running.
Yeah, how to use your gears a little better. How to maybe sit up a little more and open up your chest so you can catch your breath while you're, those kinds
Yeah,
of
let me
things.
I have
Let me speak to
received
that
the
point. Go ahead.
push too.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
Ca- One of our riders, Calvin, will just come up behind you and just say, "Hey, how you doing?" and just put his hand
Oh,
on the small of my back
wow.
for a few minutes. So
Right.
that
And now you're at the
happens.
top of the hill.
And I've been on both ends of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, maybe it seems obvious for people who ride a lot about the use of gearing, but maybe for many cyclists it's not. And I've been cycling long enough that I can speak to the change over time of 9-speed to 10-speed to 11-speed. And one of the reasons for that is to give you a wide range of gearing so that you can gear down, keep your legs, your cadence high, keep your legs moving. And that's probably that's the main thing to keep in mind when you're trying to climb a hill, is to take the work away from your legs and put it on your cardio system by keeping as much as possible a high cadence instead of just kind of grunting it out really hard. And the point that you made is also good, to shift from holding the hoods and the shifter part to the tops. That gives you a more vertical, open chest, easier breathing kind of
Aerodynamics
posture.
isn't
going slow.
necessary then. Yeah.
Right.
I'm a seated climber. How about you guys? Do you stand much when you climb? Out of the saddle?
Depends. It depends on the length of the climb and what the goal is. If I have a choice, I'm going to stay seated and I'm going to just rev up the speed of the cadence and try and float my way over. But there are times where it's really steep.
Yeah.
That one's one where I just don't appear to have the mass to stay seated in the saddle. You're getting up because I need to get over the hill.
I'll stand up because I know that when I first started riding, I couldn't stand up. I just did not have those muscles to enable me to stand up, and I guess I'm a little bit afraid I'll lose that if I don't keep using it.
Right.
So I want to make sure I can still do that. But I find that, it's, and also having ridden on a tandem where you don't stand up as much because you have to make a concentrated effort to do it in unison and
I think
all
that's
that.
so hard.
So it's possible, but it's just not so spontaneous. So I appreciate the single bike that you can just stand up at will and get off your behind.
And there was one of the ride leads gave me a tip sometimes that if you are experiencing kind of one of those rougher days where maybe you just can't seem to get your air system working the way you want it to work, that is an opportunity to be in and out of the saddle because it changes the way you're sitting and your diaphragm and how much air you're drawing in, and that can be huge if you're having one of those, I just can't seem to get my breathing and this pedaling thing to go together. Change your outlook by changing your altitude by standing up and then sitting down again.
And that's my approach too. Is like, I mean, it's a known fact that for almost everybody at a given speed, you're using less energy to go seated. But eventually it gets to be, you want to break from that. And even though it's a little harder, you can stand up for 10, 20, 25 strokes for 30 seconds or however you want to think about it and just work standing at the same speed. And even though it is in a way it's harder, it's a break.
Yeah.
And then you sit back down and go for a while. So alternating is, I think, a pretty good strategy sometimes too for sustained climb.
And in particular, it changes the head game, right? If you've got it in your head that like this is the hill that will not end, sometimes just getting up, all of a sudden your perception of how hard you're working changes, and you can go longer because now all of a sudden when you sit down again, you're like, hey, I'm sitting. This is awesome. I can do another 50 strokes, no problem.
Yeah, I can do this. Yeah. And too, when you're brand new, to get off the bike, to pull over and get off the bike and take a break. just for a few seconds makes
yeah.
a world of difference when you're still trying to get those cycling legs under you. It does
That's a good
help.
point.
So you talked about riding in the vineyards and things that are prevalent now in Washington County. Does the club do that specific wine type tours, or go through the vineyard type ride? Do you incorporate the vineyards into your riding?
We do not really.
We do in that the roads go by
The
them.
roads
It's
go
not a
by,
conscious-
you go
Inadvertently.
through them.
Right, it's
yeah.
not a conscious, okay, this is a wine ride.
Right, right.
Unless it's wine with an H.
Yes. That's
like it. I
yeah.
like it.
No whining.
There are, I think a lot of us will see wineries and then want to come back on Thanksgiving weekend or Memorial Day or another Saturday and say, oh, I keep riding by that one. I wonder what it's like. But you really can't get many bottles in a jersey pocket.
Right.
And
Although we have members that probably have tried.
and yeah, it's just when we're doing 3 hours worth of exercise, it doesn't really it's one thing to stop and have a quick espresso.
Yeah.
That's another thing to have a glass of wine.
Right.
It's a little
That's
different.
very true.
So, but there are some fabulous wine rides around here. Some of them are put on by bike clubs or bike stores and nonprofits like the Heart Association I mentioned. My kind of bike winery home away from home is Vista Hills in Dundee. A friend of mine is the manager and winemaker there, and he's a cyclist. So, and he's on top of a really steep hill, so it makes the last bit kind of rewarding too. But it's just real pretty. We get close to occasionally we get down close to Yamhill County on some of our rides, but not very often. But I think a lot of the people in the club do partake in one way or the other of the wineries, whether it's a tasting weekend or one of those charity rides or something of that nature.
Yeah.
And we will advertise. Like everyone knows about group rides or big event rides. And so a lot of the times we mention that we do announcements at the beginning of any given ride. Well, especially for charity rides,
sure.
we make a point of saying, there's a ride coming up and it's going to be this awesome ride over here. You're going to have to pay for it, but this is where you're going to get to go. And some of the winery rides will show up that way. And on top of it, you've made friends, and these people also drink and ride bikes, so it goes out in email.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah. And I think that's another benefit of club membership is that communication. Hey, what about this great ride? Instead of doing the club ride, in July on this Saturday, we'll go out and do this ride, and for a change of pace, or we'll carpool down to Albany or whatever and do their covered bridge ride.
Right.
Things like that sometimes otherwise you wouldn't know about all that going on up and down the I-5 corridor or even beyond.
Yeah, we have a little tradition of the Monster Cookie Metric Century is kind of a first of the year open up your legs that a bunch of people go down and do together. Several of us camp together on Cycle Oregon, so we can do those week-long trips together. But we've got a contingency that seems to be pulling off a Crater Lake trip like once or twice a year. They go and camp. And
there's a semi-organized semi-supported tour around Crater Lake. And so you drive down as a group and you camp at this campsite and you cycle up to Crater Lake, go around the lake, come back down. It's a great little weekend.
It is. And again, somebody's done a lot of the planning and you just kind of show up. Or maybe you're one of the planners. But we're starting to run out of time. So let's talk about some of the riding. Right now we talked about cold weather riding. And most club rides, I don't know, in the Wheelman, the ride leader's going to be there regardless. If it's pouring down rain, nobody may want to ride when you get there, but we're going to be there. I mean, we mean it when we say there's a ride on Saturday. But ice is something, we don't expect people to risk their lives to get to the ride or to ride their bikes. Things like that would cancel.
Freezing fog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get that sometimes. We will we had to cancel, I think, 2 rides last year.
3, actually.
3.
It was unprecedented.
And we always send someone out to the start, though, anyway. So we come out and we wait and sit with a cup of coffee, let people know if they didn't get the email or see the Facebook post or something like that.
Or Twitter or something.
Yeah, Twitter hasn't worked for us, but people do tend to check Facebook or the website. We'll send an email. We'll do all 3 of those things all at once. But we're getting up early. We're doing that. Checking the weather constantly, calling people who live out here. So what's it look like now? But and that's what comes down. There's a lot of days where it's rainy, it's windy. The 3 of us could go for a ride, but we don't want the responsibility of getting 40 people behind us also.
So cyclists who are not inclined, and I'm sometimes myself one of them, but are not inclined to ride in rain should know that it's surprising how much better it is riding in the rain if you have fenders.
Yes. Good point.
We always, I mean, we have fender bikes, but even if you have fenders that you then take off in the summer, but the difference between rider comfort with fenders in the rain or even just wet roads. And for groups, we are very insistent about what we call buddy flaps, which is an extension of the fender so that you've got a flap that goes down, you know, within 4 or 5 inches at least of the road surface, so that the rider behind you is not getting wet.
So your glasses are still clear, all that kind of thing.
So describe for the uninitiated, if you don't have fenders and you're behind the somebody with no fenders, what happens to you?
Free muddy shower. Free
Stripe
muddy,
like
gravelly
this. Right,
shower.
right. In your teeth,
In
in
your
your
glasses,
eyes.
yeah.
So that's just not conducive to
Right.
group
And
riding.
if you're the rider, you got it. Your knees are getting it wet and cold because
Yeah.
in your feet
And your feet.
And your
and
feet.
your backside. So the fenders make
Yeah.
that. I think that you know, people don't realize either how easy it is to say, I'm going to stay home because it's raining. But it's amazing how often it's only a little bit of rain. It's a lot drier than it looks.
Yeah.
We're not in Georgia where the rain comes down and drops this size. I mean, it's a little this, a little bit this, that, and the other. But you can still have a pretty nice fun day.
And also, we've developed a skill in our club of being able to ride between the drops. It's hard to
You've
do,
seen The
but
Matrix,
you
right?
know.
Well, thank you guys. I think we're just about out of time now, and we'll have to join you to figure out how to ride between the drops, I guess. Thank you for joining us from Portland Velo, and I hope that our discussion about riding in a club, another group of people that enjoys bicycling, could help you, benefit you, help you achieve goals maybe for the new year. So we've had Glen Bolen here and Shawna Turner and Dave Kelly again from Portland Velo, and just trying to share with you the joy of bicycling and how much fun it is. And so thanks to all of you for being our guests and coming out to be on the show. And thank you for joining us on Psychology Today. And Northwest Bicycle Safety Council wants to encourage you to ride your bikes, wear a helmet, and ride safely and legally. And come out and ride with us to learn how to do that, to build your skills, to increase your confidence, to reach goals in 2015 that maybe you didn't think you were capable of, or just to have a good time. I think these people have explained, our guests, how great it is to ride a bike out in the rural areas of Washington County, even though it's kind of rolling hills, and just enjoy nature. So come and join us. Thank you.